Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It is another beautiful day. Welcome to Cafecito con Colon. It's going to be a great day, and I've got a great guest for you this morning, Marcus Aurelius Porter.
Hello, Brian.
Good morning, my friend.
How are you?
Fantastic.
Excellent. How much time did it take
And your coffee?
Oh, I had it earlier. But I like the mugs. Those are nice.
Thank you. This is a limited edition, limited to one.
Oh, really? So the guests
Yeah, Jonathan Muniz, who you know, ordered this and got it for me from some company called Zazzle. And it's so awesome. It was a surprise gift. And on the one side, it has the logo, and then the other side, it has my quote that you've heard me use many times. Your success in life is always directly proportional to the success you help others achieve. And you help me achieve success, and I hope it's come back to you.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great mug. You don't do anything halfway. That's why I appreciate it.
I'm just so glad you said yes.
Of course.
You on.
Yeah, you know, it's my pleasure.
I hope you'll say that after we're done.
I'm sure, or I'll never speak to you again. One of the two.
All right, I'm going to get started here. It is exactly 9 o'clock. I don't want to waste any time this morning after yesterday. For regular viewers, you know that yesterday the connectivity between Zoom and Facebook was a challenge, but Charles, Ashley the third and I, we didn't give up, and we finally came to the air at 9:15 and then went to that 10:20. It was a great day yesterday. If you missed that episode, please tune in and click on the link from yesterday. I think you'll find it very enriching, enlightening, and quite powerful. I've had many moments in the last 75 days of episodes with Cafecito con Colon, and yesterday was certainly a powerful day for me personally. Yeah, so I hope you'll check that out. And today is going to be equally, if not even more powerful. And I think for me, I have a huge soft spot and desire to support, in particular, young men of color on their journey, and young people and young men inspire me. And when I hear young men's stories, particularly as it relates to Black young men, I think it impacts me in a particularly deep way. And that's what happened yesterday. And when I think about the Black men who have been a part of my journey, who I have become very, very endeared to, and just respect so much. Charles and our paths cross frequently, but not deeply. And we engage briefly and not for long periods of time. But with Marcus Aurelius Porter, our paths have crossed frequently and deeply, in my opinion. And he has been somebody served, supported, and just been fortunate to spend a good amount of time with. However, there's an asterisk, because I think that, and we've talked about it on this show a lot, and it's part of what led me to bring these Black voices to Cafecito con Colon, which is we all may have many Black friends. And when contemplating racism, we sometimes take a lot of comfort in that, in those Black friendships that we have. And I think it was either Mike or Chad or Charles who, when they did their video to camera, they basically said, you know, look, take comfort in having Black friends, but unless you've had uncomfortable conversations and really ask them to share with you their journey and their experience, their lived experience, really are those friendships hollow, or are they as enriched as they can be? And those are really my words, not the words they used in the video, but the way they said it really made me contemplate. You know, I knew that Marcus was from Baltimore. I know he's been here for a decade. I know he's made a difference in New Mexico every day he's been here. But have I ever, as much as I care about him, as much as I love him, as much as I support him on his journey, have I ever engaged him in an uncomfortable conversation like I had yesterday with Charles about his lived experience? And I haven't. And that's, I'm not the best version of myself I can be, and I was created to be, if I'm not having those uncomfortable conversations, which is why I've created this space for people to join me and to help me be a better person and to help me be a better ally. And Marcus has definitely made me a better person so far, but I think today we go deeper. And I'm grateful to be able to do that because he said yes. And as is always the case, I will put up, that's my first 3-minute monologue, and then now I'm going to links. And I'm going to try and just do 5 or 6 minutes of links so that we can maximize our time together, Marcus. And so let me get ready to start doing that. I hope everybody is doing well this morning. It's a beautiful day out. The weather is going to be fantastic. My excitement for the day is I woke up to a refrigerator that was not operational. And so I am in the market for appliance repair. I called my friend Michael and said, who do we trust? And he gave me the name of a company that we trust, which is awesome, but they can't get out here till tomorrow. So if you have a refrigerator repair person who can come to my home today instead of tomorrow, feel free to text me at 270-2154 and help me get this refrigerator fixed. And then, you know, my wife is amazing. I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's time to get appliances because and you know, we've been here for 20 years, same appliances when we moved in. Our oven is one of those self-cleaning ovens that activates at will, not when I want to. And so we had to put in like baling wire so it doesn't activate. And like our appliances have been through it. And she's like, so I was like, it's time to get appliances. We've been here for 20 years. And she's like, no, I really like our refrigerator. I think we just need to get it repaired. It's like, I you know, when it comes to spouses that are, what do you call it? Content, right? Like content. Like she's going to bury me in the backyard. We're never going to get a bigger house. I mean, I've got the most content spouse in America, I think. But
it's
anyway, say that again, Marcus.
That it's a nice backyard. We can do worse.
Thank you. You are blessed. So good morning, Sue. Good morning, Adrian. Good morning, Dr. Roybal. And good morning, Jonathan Jones, representing Valencia County. I know let's see here. So let me put up, so feel free to text me that number if you got a repair person. Hey, the Journal had some great stories in there. Some of them related. You know that yesterday the governor had like a 2-hour presser. I mean, unbelievable. I just continue to ability information across the board from the press and just sit there for 2 hours doing that. I've done press conferences that have gone 45 minutes, and I feel like those are like a 2 or 3 hour lift for me because of the intensity, right, Marcus? And and the governor just
she's a strong woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that you get to serve with her on her council, or for her on her council on racial injustice and equity, and as she gets ready to appoint a new czar. And I know that you've made an application. I am in your corner on that, and we are glad that you put in for that.
Yeah, I thought it could be a benefit. I mean, if the council can do what it's set out to do, then it'll be a massive benefit for the state.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I'll be curious to get, maybe we can talk about this a little bit. I posted up the soft opening of breweries today on the portals and the patios of New Mexico. And then on Monday, they'll be able to open up inside. The governor did a good job explaining the fact-based and best practice base as to why breweries can open and bars cannot. Bars have different traceable behavior of humans inside bars in terms of how long they stay and what activities they do, and whether or not they promote social distancing as compared to breweries. There is a different approach to breweries, and there's a different human interaction and activity that goes on in breweries where they're serving food. And I know, Marcus, you've done a nice job of supporting the brewery scene in Albuquerque because I've seen you at a couple.
I mean, that's where we do our events. That's, loosens you up a little bit, makes the conversations a lot easier. That's
right. So also I posted up a related story about Cumbre, or I should say La Cumbre. They rolled out their Black is Beautiful beer, and that got covered today in the journal as well. And so check that out.
I wonder if it's a porter.
That's a good one. I wonder if it's a porter. If it is, it's going to taste good because everything's better with porter. All right, so let me give you a couple more deals here in terms of stories that are important or relevant. I want to, yesterday was a good day in terms of government accountability, transparency, and excellence out of the Office of the State Auditor. For those of you that know me and watch my work, and not just Cafecito, know that last month we went in and provided some very pointed guidance, and I pulled together a table of leaders in McKinley County that operate the hospital that is in disarray, and its stakeholders had certainly lost confidence. And I came in with some heavy words, guidance, and set a table for action. And yesterday, that action and that call to action culminated in the firing of the CEO, Mr. Conejo, which, so that I maintain appropriate comment on this, I will just say that that happened, and we're optimistic about the interim CEO, who was the new Chief Financial Officer. And you'll find a link in that story that I just posted from KRQE to the story that they did last month about the work that I was doing there in McKinley County. So I think that is important, particularly as we know McKinley County, San Juan County, Cibola County, these are hotspots that take deep, deep hits in terms of loss of life and in terms of positive cases with our sisters and brothers in the Navajo Nation. Our Native American community has, and our African American community, and our communities of color, and our impoverished community. There are so many studies coming out right now, and I say studies, but I mean statistical data that is being presented that shows the overrepresentation of people suffering from positive cases of COVID-19 and death. And poverty means lack of access to resources, lack of access to being able to commit to best practices, and it's just heartbreaking. But anyway, there's that. In terms of another great KRQE story, which I've become an even larger fan of KRQE and their ability to present positive information. But this information is important information because I field a lot of calls as it relates to evictions being suspended during COVID-19. This story here has got some information about the fund that has been established for rent relief, aiming to prevent those mass evictions and to address some homelessness issues here in our community. Now, let me get to a little more, I guess what I would say heavy stuff, although today I want to, in terms of my social profit advocacy, today is the kickoff of the National Institute of Flamenco's Festival Flamenco, which you can view online virtually. I posted that link up yesterday. Today, I want to give a shout out to my friends that do great work with the New Mexico Philharmonic, of which I'm a huge supporter. Although, like with all my checks, Marcus, they don't have commas in them. They're small, but they come with a full heart. And the New Mexico Philharmonic is one of those little checks.
Consistency is what's important. You don't have to give $10,000, but if you're a consistent donor that an organization can rely on, that means a massive amount. Well,
you might get to speak to that a little bit today on our project for housing that you are passionate about. Okay. You've squeezed me out of a couple of those small checks too along the way.
Hey, that's what friends do, right?
That's right. That's right. Hey, and so there's the link to the 2020 annual car raffle for the Philharmonic. Now, to the somewhat heavier stuff. Let me just say that today in the Journal, you'll see a story about our federal delegation, our senior and junior senator, our junior senator who's about to become our senior senator. Both have come out in support of legislation to move away from warrior mentality in policing. And there is a story about that. And a story in the Atlantic regarding what the world or what America can learn from the world about policing. And I think that's a very good story. And they've got a paywall, but I think if you don't frequent the Atlantic, they've got several free clicks that you can go through there. So I hope you'll do that. I also want to say thanks to our corporate community that is stepping up, whether it's Bank of America, Mondragon, President Mondragon sent me that where they committed, I think, $1 billion, billion dollars, I think, in 4 years to assist, support, and engage our communities of color. The Optimist Daily highlighted PayPal's similar commitment at about half that clip, $530 million to support businesses like and so make sure you put your application there to get a grant so we can increase the quality of your presentation and presence in our community with, is it PT
marketing.
PT?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, PT.
I posted the link to PT marketing in my promotion today of our visit. You betcha. And then in a positive side and in a way for us to continue to listen and make sure that Black voices are heard. Good morning, Juliana. NPR has a great story where they reached out to young people and said, what's your playlist? What's your top song that's helping you get through processing what we're going through at this moment in time? And that's a great NPR piece there. And then the last link I'm going to put up, because it's 9:15, is the NPR story, which I've been thinking about, and Robert Gibson did a phenomenal job spoofing this topic last night on his show, Big D. Holy cow. But this is an important story for us to contemplate, because I think it gets to something I've mentioned before, which is trying to be supportive, trying to listen, try to understand, try to process through the lens of our Black community, our African-American community, while not co-opting Black community and their journey. And this is a story about kente cloth and the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives rocking kente cloth during their, I think it was during the caucus meeting. Marcus may have a better sense of that.
I know I saw when they were all kneeling, I saw her in the kente cloth. But whenever she's with the Black Caucus, it seems like she's in kente cloth. Whenever all of them are wearing it, I see her in kente cloth.
So that's not just now, that's historically been her practice?
Yeah, that's not the first time at all. Because I mean, honestly, none of the people in the Black Caucus are regularly just in kente cloth. It's when there's some kind of occasion. Right.
So it's interesting because you're right. The story leads with them kneeling for the 9 minutes or the 8 minutes 46 seconds, and but it has created quite a controversy, and I think it gets back to that thin line of co-opting, and there are some people who took that as a mockery. I think maybe the historical perspective of how often she's done that over time, and not just in this moment in time, would be helpful to that conversation. But this really kind of gives a great historical perspective of that cloth and kings and queens, donning that cloth and things of that nature, and whether they're, just whether it's appropriate. And I don't take a position on it one way or the other, but I think the conversation is extremely enlightening. And this article does a good job of really, it's not a puff piece. It's kind of a heavy piece. So check that out. And I think that's it. I think that's where we're going to go today. And now I get to visit with one of my dear friends, who has been a real leader in the community in the last decade that he's been here. He hails from Baltimore. And a decade ago, we got lucky enough to attract him to New Mexico, and I'll let him talk a little bit about his journey to New Mexico. But I should just, in terms of data points, he has been a leader in the conversation about the value of our credit unions and how they serve our community deeply and in a way that is much different than the traditional banking industry and sector. I am a member of a credit union. I have been for 20 years. I love their model. I love their engagement. I love their investment in community. And that's not to say anything, President Mondragon, disparage the banking community, because I appreciate that $1 billion that Bank of America has stepped up with. And I appreciate your engagement, President Mondragon, one of Bank of America's, I think, certainly New Mexico, I think, is first Hispanic president, but it may be one of the first Hispanic presidents for Bank of America region in the country. And so I appreciate your leadership, Pablito, Paul. But I will say that I think that the model for credit unions has been a very powerful model. And I know that Marcus has led in that conversation. I know that we have a woman of color leading Eagle Credit Union, which I love. And I actually promoted her earlier this week too. She keeps coming up. But
Marsha.
Exactly. And then Dwayne, who's a great friend of mine, he's their main auditor there at Eagle. So Eagle's done a nice job of having some good diversity and leadership at their credit union. And Marcus has led in that conversation, has been a director, I think, for the association. Is that right, Marcus?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's done all that while also running and being an entrepreneur and running his business, Porter Business Consultants. And PT Marketing, which you can find in the link that promoted today's episode of Cafecito con Colon, which is also known as My Extrovert Therapy. Everybody tuned in this morning. You are a therapist, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you for helping keep me on the level over the last 3 months. He went to Morgan State University, where he studied marketing and also got his MBA from Towson University. Is that right?
University of Baltimore in Towson. Yeah, they had a joint MBA program.
Excellent, excellent. So he's been on a great educational journey. His website is ptmktg.com. So get out there and check out this incredible person. If you need marketing, if you need communications, if you need an ability to take your product to the next level to market, then I want you to call Marcus Aurelius Porter. He is the man. Marcus, welcome to Cafecito con Colon.
Well, thank you, Brian, for that little ad spot there.
You betcha. You betcha. It is great to have you on Cafecito con Colon. It is 20 minutes after the hour. We've got a good 40 minutes to engage with one another. Let's start by having you introduce yourself to our viewers. We get anywhere from 20 to 60 viewers live every morning. And then by the end of the day, we usually have about 1,000 views. And I suspect today will be no different. And tell folks who don't know you about Marcus J. Porter.
All right. Well, Marcus J. Porter, Aurelius is what I just go by because it's fun. I moved here about 10 years ago from Baltimore, Maryland, as Brian mentioned. I was in my early 20s, so it was kind of just time to explore. The economy had just crashed. Interestingly enough, I'll get into new things on this one since I've given some stump speeches. When I first moved here, one of my best friends who just turned 25 died in a car crash. And that Saturday, we buried her, and I moved out here on Monday. My best friend, his father was going through stage 4 lung cancer and was just starting his treatment that very same weekend. And my grandmother had died maybe a few months earlier that same year. So it was a heck of a time in my life when I decided to, I was out here in New Mexico. That shaped a few of the first years, a lot of grief and a lot of just growing up. I already had to grow up pretty early before, but that really pushed me, having somebody that close to my age pass away and cancer and just so much. So I did end up getting into credit unions. I just talk about my locations as I moved on here. I did get into the Credit Union Association, credit unions, people helping people. It's a great model, not-for-profit financial institutions. Big fan. I have been able to speak about that on the national stage, the largest financial convention in the world, JC. And just really, I focused a lot on financial education and empowering people. So not just educating children, but letting them educate their parents or teens, young adults. It was really a comprehensive package to push financial education. There are probably some links to YouTube from KOB for that years and years ago. I look the same. That's probably about 8 years ago at this point. And then I started to, and I'll give credit to Quantum Credit Union Association of New Mexico, because I was able to get politically aligned there, because there would often be events with in Santa Fe where a politician would come, or Ben Ray would have a fundraiser and some of us would go up. So I really got to take my first step into the political realm that way. Met Zach Quintero, the former president of the Young Dems of New Mexico. Great guy. I think he's working for the state now. He's a lawyer. Then moving further into the Young Democrats of New Mexico for a few years, helping them organize, get a little infrastructure. I wanted them to have a lot of gravitas. If I was going to be a part of it, that's just what has to happen. So we worked together very well as a team. Then I ran for vice chairman of the Democratic Party of New Mexico. And that team, which were the Young Democrats across this entire state, were really what helped buoy me across that finish line. Because, and was that 2 years ago now? January, my father passed away. So I declared for vice chair in December. Then in January, my father passed away, and then my dog passed away. And then I really was like, well, why am I in this race? I have a lot of stuff I need to deal with. I know how I dealt with pain in my past, my first move to town. So fast forwarding almost 10 years, I wanted to make sure I handled it well. But they helped me. They helped support me emotionally. Having good surrogates really helps when you have a big state. And I won in a landslide. But and ever since then, I've just been trying to strive to accomplish a few goals with connecting the Young Democrats, young people in general, to the party proper, making sure the more information and communication go out, just making sure we have the infrastructure to be successful. That's really been my goal. Happy Pride Month. I'm also a gay man, a part of the LGBTQ community. That's intertwined in my life around every struggle I've dealt with as well, that intersectionality. That's always been something. So I make sure.
Well, it's not, I mean, it's something that is not to be taken lightly. And I know that before we came to camera, we talked about the importance of that issue, and we'll spend some time on that today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you can't stop being anything at any time. So it's all one. But yeah, became vice chair. I started my business back in I really took hold of it on Martin Luther King Day 2017, because I like things to be, symbolic. So I started PT marketing and really just went hard at it to try to do as well as I could. And it's been going well so far. One of very few African-American entrepreneurs, well, period, but in New Mexico in particular. So, and other than that, nonprofit work, because I really, as we mentioned before, helping people who are experiencing homelessness or about to experience homelessness, making sure they have permanent housing. I was vice president of the board of directors for Supportive Housing Coalition. I know Lori has been on your show so far. They do a lot of great work giving permanent housing to people experiencing homelessness, not just transitional, because you can't really start rebuilding your life if you don't have a safe and secure place to live.
That's right. The coalition is certainly embraced and led when it comes to the model of housing first.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Housing first for our viewers is really kind of an approach, a philosophy, and a model. And Marcus has led that discussion with his really strong leadership at the Supportive Housing Coalition. SHC has been an organization that's engaged me for years, and Marcus has helped educate on that issue, and I appreciate his leadership in that space.
Yeah, it's the model. So thank you. Appreciate everything you do. and have done. He hosted a luncheon, our first luncheon, and it was a massive success. Um, with the housing first model, UNM did a study on it. It talks about how much money it saved New Mexico. Martin Heinrich, our senator, obviously really helped a lot in getting the funding for that. But just in emergency services by themselves, it saves a ton of money, because if you're just out there on the street and it's really cold, well, that's a reason someone might have to pick you up and take you to the emergency room right there, and the taxpayers pay that. But if you have housing, it saves a lot of money to the community itself. It's just a really good model.
That's excellent. Let's talk a little bit, Marcus. I think the lens you look through and your lived experiences is quite fascinating, because it's a stark shift, a decade ago, and not only, and I've offered my support on your journey, and my sincere condolences to the deep losses you've suffered over the course of time, in particular recent past. And I can certainly empathize from one aspect of having lost my father when I was a young man. You're still a young man, and so I know a little bit about that pain. But what's interesting to me about your story is that you go from a place that's like, 2 out of 3 people in Baltimore are Black. I mean, I think literally during the census, they were like at 66%.
Yeah.
So it's literally like 2 out of 3. And I may be slightly off. You can look it up, but that's my recollection.
Close enough. It's close enough.
Right. And then you come here and 2.9.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, when you walk into any room on any given day, there is a better than good chance. In fact, it's almost a probability that you will be the only Black person in the room. And
yeah.
And so tell me about what that transition's like, going from a place where you are the majority to a place where you are the deep minority.
Well, it's funny, because in a sense, you never stop feeling like a minority as long as you're in America.
Fair.
And it wasn't as drastic of a change as you might think. Because being a Black person, you have to very specifically know how to be a Black person, who you are, and a white person. You got to know how white people think and how white people interact and how white people go about their daily lives, because I'm going to interview most likely with a white person. So when I say just my first job in Baltimore, downtown Baltimore, if I walk into that building on any given floor, I'm one of 2 Black people. So that's not something that was very odd, if I wanted to, because there's a big community of white people in Baltimore, especially some of the older areas, and they have a lot of money. So if you do any cultural activities, you're going to be in a seat. Like there's a big theater there, Center Stage. If you go there, you're going to see a lot of people who are not Black. If you're in the Inner Harbor, you'll see Black people, but you'll see a lot of people who aren't Black. Anywhere there's something to do, especially if it's something to do that takes a little bit of money, you're going to see a ton of people who aren't Black there. So that wasn't a big change for me. It would happen more often, but like I said, with where I would work, there was never too many Black people where I would work. I interned in credit unions in Maryland. I had a Black supervisor, and her supervisor was Black, but that was maybe like out of tons and tons of other people. So it would be strange for me not to see tons of like people who didn't look exactly like me. And Baltimore is still pretty segregated. So if you go to Little Italy, there's not a ton of Black people there. If you go to Greektown, where my sister actually lives, there's not a lot of Black people there, but now there's a much larger Hispanic community, go figure, in Greektown. Right. But so you can just go to different areas of the city and you'll be that one Black person. So it wasn't a big difference here. And my best friend happens to be here, was also from Maryland. He's Black, so that helped. But it did take a few years for us to figure out where like the Black people were. So, just because we're just doing normal things to hang out, whether you go to a bar or somewhere like that. But it took some years until I really got involved with the Masons here that I found Black people. So not a big change.
I know you've got at least one fellow Mason who tuned in this morning, Alex Flores, my second son, if I had a second son, Alex, and I love him like a son. And he clapped back on that story, saying there isn't a story about the kente cloth. And I know you also feel like that's not as much of the story in terms of the context and how frequently the speaker has worn kente cloth over the years in support of the Black community, African American community. But Alex is tuned in. I know he's a very proud Mason. And
hello, brother.
Yeah. So you've got your Hispanic brother there in the Masons with you. Tell us, part of why I wanted to continue this Black Voices kind of stretch on Cafecito con Colon is for us to have a better understanding and opportunity to listen to people's lived experience, particularly as it relates to giving us that hard talk about what it's actually like to have a lived experience that is particularly uncomfortable, that is particularly burdensome in terms of somebody like you who has persisted and got a master's in business and started your own business here in New Mexico. But maybe you can provide a little bit of that, because you and I do a good job of lifting up New Mexico, I like to think. And I wonder about, for me, it's I don't lift up New Mexico in the context of knowing all these data points that actually are somewhat incongruent with the positive things I say about New Mexico 100% of the time. And so I think it's important for us to have real talk about, yes, this is the best place in America. And yes, we love our multicultural community, and our state and the 33 counties of New Mexico are all my favorite counties. And you've traveled them all with me. And I want to say that too, as vice chair in your leadership role in the Democratic Party, you have hit the road with me. We've spent days on end together traveling the thousands of miles of New Mexico that are so beautiful, but we don't talk about some of the uncomfortable parts of the story. And I'm hoping maybe you can help us better understand what that journey is like for someone like you.
Yeah, it's funny because we were texting just the other day. Well, had a phone call, and he sent me a text after saying, "Well, you must be distracted, or something's up with you." I'm not very good at hiding when I'm, I guess, going through something, or you've just known me for a while, I guess. And I responded, well, I can't say I'm doing fine, but I'm very, very used to not doing fine, not doing well, and whatever that means, trauma, obviously. But it's just something, it's so inherent to just being alive as a Black person that to recognize and talk about it seems redundant. And that is one difference, though, I will say, from Maryland to here. I was still around a lot of people who just understood the experience, who just understood it. So we didn't really have to talk about it other than a look at each other like, well, you know what that is. And we all knew what that was. But I do know here in my interactions with people that people don't just know it. They don't just automatically get it. So it makes me talk about it more, which, brings the emotion, brings
painful
the feeling
in itself, right? The conversation's painful.
Yeah, because I can be fine. And then if we want to talk about that, then, I can't compartmentalize, because if I couldn't compartmentalize, who would have survived the trauma that's just there? I mean, imagine being a kid and learning about slavery, like learning, because I had, in my elementary school, it was multi-ethnic. I had friends of all different races, so that wasn't something that was odd to me. So then finding out about slavery and then understanding that racism still exists is just a kind of a blow to your sense of humanity, and not about you being a human, but other people's humanity and what they are willing to do and show. And it just, so from a very early age, like middle school or so, you start going down this path of analyzing the world and what you can change, what you can't. You become depressed about it. Some people don't get out of that. Some people do figure out a way and make it. I happen to be my family happened to be one of those groups that made it. We did end up in the projects for a while, and my mother worked her way out of there. I did see the drugs and whatnot going around, but you know, I was like, if she can do it, if she can work so hard, and she didn't have her college degree at that point. If she can do it, then I can do this. I mean, but it's a trauma that you learn to deal with, positively or negatively, and you kind of just try to go about your life knowing that you'll still keep being brushed up against that trauma time and time again, just because. There was something I was watching about just people understanding how deep this goes. Even the mention of cotton. I was talking to so he was doing his MFA, and he did this room, and it was making reference to slavery. So he used cotton balls instead of, just actual cotton. What is he going to go pick some cotton for this? Come on. Right. But one of the critiques was, well, why not use actual cotton or something like this? You go deeper, and it's like, well, the fonts that cotton, the advertisements, cotton, the fabric of our lives, that font, just the word cotton, is a trigger. Like, it is literally a trigger. But we don't go through telling everybody, oh, this triggers me, and that, we don't tend to complain as much as some people don't like protests. We don't tend to complain as Black people because we fight for more, but we don't expect more. We don't expect things to get better and different. You hope for it. That's why Barack Obama went on hope and change, not the guarantee of change. I mean, there's just a lot to unpack. It's complex. The intersectionality with me being LGBTQ didn't make it any easier. But, just if you do see your Black friend walking around, even with a smile, realize there's a burden there it's been there forever, but it doesn't make it any lighter to bear. So that's kind of the experience.
I mean, I appreciate that example because it's a heavy example of just how those triggers are things that if you haven't lived the experience, you would never even begin to contemplate that it's a source of pain for somebody you care about, the way I care for you. What's our role in that? What's our role in identifying those triggers and being more sensitive about that? In fact, Alex challenged me on the Kente story, the Kente cloth story. I think it's a nothing burger, essentially. And my response is it's a something burger if people in the African American community or the Black community are not comfortable with it. I think it's worth a conversation. Now, you may come down that it's okay or it's not okay. I know you seem to come down on the side it's okay in the context and in her historical advocacy. It's not from today. It's something that she has done for some time with the Black Caucus. Alex obviously thinks it's okay, but others do not. And so even us engaging in that conversation has allowed me to look up what's the historical context of that cloth, as opposed to when I go to the state fair and go into the pavilion and go look at that and go, man, that sure is colorful and beautiful. Now I actually have some historical context about what that's about. So at least in that regard, it's helpful to have the conversation.
Yeah, that's true. And that's not a perspective I have. So it's good to hear. Because the nothing burger side, it's like, even if this had been the first time she wore it, so what? She's showing some solidarity. So what? I was going to say before you said that, like the minutia, don't get lost in it, because it doesn't. Will there be some African Americans? Yeah, because people are people. Somebody's going to have one comment or another, but the minutia, like understanding who our allies are. Now, if you have a massive bandwidth, then fine, tackle everything. But I don't. So I have very limited bandwidth because I'm already dealing with it myself. Right. So to then deal with it outwardly just takes twice as much. So I'm specific and selective about when and where I do, because it takes a lot of energy just to go through this. So, but to the point you made, it did make you look into it a little deeper. It gave you some history, etc. That's good. And it arms you with facts against anyone who does bring up the article saying, oh, she's just doing X, Y, and Z. We'll actually have facts to the contrary. So that part, I do get the importance there. But I don't have the bandwidth for something like that. When the president's going to, on Juneteenth, to Tulsa, the site of those massacres, and being just an outright racist, like I don't have the bandwidth to talk about whether Nancy Pelosi, is this really, is she appropriating black, there's actually enemies on the other side really against us. But if you have the bandwidth.
No, that's a really great point, and maybe that's Alex's point too. And I do think though that it helps as an ally, right? I mean, I would hope you would consider me a good ally, and I'm trying to be a better ally.
I would not do this show, I guarantee.
Fair enough, right? Fair enough. In my constant struggle to try and be a good ally, whether it's to you as a Black man or whether it is to the LGBTQ plus community and being a good ally in that community, I think you can find people in that community that will say that a good ally over the years. Or women in politics being a good ally there. Those are some of the pockets where I feel like where I've done some of my better work. I still think it's important for us to always, as an ally, continue to question whether or not appropriation is happening and whether or not what we do is appropriating. And I don't think that if we don't talk about whether it is or isn't, we never get better at making sure we don't. And I guess that's for me why that story is a good story. And maybe I'm spending too much time on this, but it's because, I talked yesterday about wanting Charles Ashley III's approval. Like I always want Alex's approval because that guy intellectually and his capacity to engage politically is like, I play checkers and I play chess. Let me just put it that way. And so I guess that's why I'm spending more time on this than it's probably worth. Let me, speaking of appropriate, go ahead, Marcus.
Well, no, because it's two different experiences. Like I don't have your experience as an ally. So, I just hadn't really thought about that, because if we do need to have checking going on within our party about, some of these supposed liberals who, one of my very first meetings I took after becoming vice chair was going to a precinct meeting. Because they're like, I'll go to precinct meeting, ward meeting. It doesn't need to be a county level. I'll go anywhere. And it was about some of the kids who were being detained, and they were looking for certain places to place them because facilities were being overrun because they were putting so many kids in cages. Being able to have some immigrants, I think it was at the fairgrounds during a certain period of time, and someone chimed up that, well, 4-H Club was trying to do something at that time, and I feel for them, but if they keep doing this, then they have to realize it makes it harder to be on their side. And I said, what? Like how, what matters more was what I ended up just saying. What matters more? These kids getting to do this activity or these people's lives? And, proud Democrat for however many decades, but sometimes you have to check people on where is your, are you just a Democrat? Are you just a Democrat because your friends are and you don't want to be called some name or something like that? I don't know. Or do you actually embody these progressive values? I mean, because they're values at this point. It's not just policy. And so that's something that as an ally, I mean, now granted, I checked her, but as an ally from one person to another who's not Black or maybe even a person of color at that point, they need to be able to have that conversation. And, you know, I don't know what that's like. Maybe this article is a great way for those kind of conversations to happen. But again, it's like, so I think this isn't wrong to spend this much time because I don't have the ally experience. I don't know anything, and I don't know anything about it, but you know, I don't have that experience. So I didn't see what you would just, you know, what you put up there as something to even think about.
Right.
But
well,
so I think that's important.
You got bigger fish to fry, right?
Well, you know.
let me ask you something I haven't asked another guest, but Jonathan Muniz brought it up a couple days ago, and I can assure you that it's in trying to be a better ally and trying to be a better communicator. I know that it was not until now that, and I'll give you my thoughts behind it, although people want to hear from you and not me, so I'll try and be brief. But I know that for many years, when I referred to the community that you're a part of, it was always the African American community for me. When I spoke it, that's what I said, African American. When I referenced Marcus Porter, he's an African American who is also in leadership, who's also an entrepreneur. In the last 17 days, I have changed my vernacular to actually say Marcus is a Black man. And for me, my thought process was as follows, right or wrong, but for me, I thought it gave extra space and room for conversation about the Black Lives Matter movement. And so for me, I transitioned my words and the terms that I use and feel comfortable using for that reason. I know that there's not a universal answer here, but maybe you can provide some perspective to us or for us, and for Jonathan and for some other folks that want to get it right. Like we don't have these conversations, people can't get it right, or that are trying to get it right. We can't get comfortable with what's appropriate, when it's appropriate, and how to be appropriate. And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's not a story, right? But for me it is, and for at least Jonathan Muniz, a man of color, who consistently has faced on his personal lived experience racism, and for him being a man of color, a Hispanic man of color. Do you have any insights on that? I haven't asked anybody else that, but
I do. So you can tell. So here's one thing about being from Baltimore, where there's a ton of Black people. There are white people there, and we're friends, a lot of us. So you'll have a white person who, I'm just going to use a white person in this example, who's used to being around a lot of Black people. And if they're of a certain age, there's really no getting around them being a part of the culture. Whether you are specifically somebody who likes rap, or you just like something that's going to be featured with, you know, you're going to be a part of the community in one way or another, and it's going to be easier. I can tell how comfortable that person is based on what terms they tend to use. When speaking, you know, introducing the vice chair, maybe he's African American, but if we're talking about the Black people and what Black people do, a lot of times it's just how comfortable you are. The situation might make it seem more appropriate to say African American, like if I'm being introduced on stage and they happen to mention that I'm African American, Black. But otherwise, it really just kind of shows me comfort level. Like, how comfortable are you around Black people that you probably end up saying Black people? And that is not like, am I uncomfortable? Like, oh, do you know these people? But just how comfortable am I? Just how often am I around Black people? How just comfortable am I if I just sit at a table full of Black people? You'll probably end up saying Black. I call myself a Black person. Do I ever use the term African American? Yeah, of course, sometimes. But I call myself a Black person because I call white people white. So if I call you a color, I'm probably going to call myself a color too. So I mean, those are the only ones that really happens to. I don't call Hispanic people brown people really, as it pertains. I mean, sometimes say black, white, brown, or something like that. But color wise, I call myself a Black person. Some Black person might not want you to. Maybe they want you to call them African American. That's probably going to be generational, because I'm a Black person. Black Lives Matter came out. It didn't, African American Lives Matter would be much longer, but I've never really took to that term very much because, yeah, I mean, my ancestry is African, but you can be a white person born in South Africa who immigrates here, and you're an African American. So I never really well, then how is that a term describing my Blackness if it's not a term that describes Blackness? Right. So I go with Black, and if I just go with Black, and that's what I call myself. As far as, I think it's a good conversation because we're talking about allies, talking about people who don't have my experience, and I don't have your experience. If you feel comfortable giving that person a handshake that's more than just the normal, stretched out shake hand, then you probably should feel comfortable calling them a Black person. If you don't, then probably just refer to them as African American whenever you feel like you need to refer to them anyway. Then I'd say that's probably a good test.
Well, I give you big old hugs and deep handshakes and still called you African American, but it's not because I wasn't comfortable with you.
Yeah, now you got the answer.
I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about, and I'll let you just kind of go on this, but the question that I wanted to present to you, and we've had a couple of members who identify in the LGBTQ plus community on the show, but we certainly haven't talked about that experience as it relates to the intersectionality of being a Black person at this moment in time. At this moment in time, where after 6 years, 7 years of the Black Lives Matter movement, going from what was seen as a movement over here to a movement that's right here, because you have so many more stakeholders who are willing to step up and say Black Lives Matter. It's a different moment in time. And much the way I think over the last 10 years, we've had some different moments in time for the LGBTQ community that have allowed allies to enter that space of support in a far more substantial way. And it's a fascinating thing. And, I remember being chair and saying, I stood for same-sex marriage, and I was the exception in the country. And now that's like, how could you be a Democratic chair in America and not stand for that value? But when I stood for that value, it was burned onto recordings and then mailed to people in northern New Mexico so that I could lose my next election. Like that's the lens I look through, and then the lens of today when it's common and it's taken for granted. I mean, it's a value, and if you're with us, you're with us, and the vast majority are. And so I wonder for you what that Black Lives Matter movement means, feels like, but particularly as you're firmly planted in that movement and being a great advocate and voice for the LGBTQ plus community.
That's a big question. Black Lives Matter.
Man.
Right. So Black Lives Matter, I mean, going from people calling it a terrorist organization more often than not to what it is now is seen as a credible movement. I'm very happy about that. I'm very happy that people other than Black people can get behind it. I'm very happy about seeing how multicultural that message has gotten. Because even in 2016, which was not quite as long ago, some of the presidential candidates had little issue saying it. I mean, it killed Martin O'Malley's chances. He was a mayor of a Black city, became governor of that, one of the richest states in the union, and then fumbles like that. It was very disappointing coming from that place. So I was glad to see the progress of it, that, it's literally saying that people's lives matter, like Black people's lives matter. Like that was so disgusting to me that people had a hard time saying it, because immediately whatever that side is, um, linked that to, well, okay, it's not a statement that Black Lives Matter, it's an organization and a terrorist. So you can say I disagree with Black Lives Matter and not act like you're not a racist for saying it by saying, oh well, it's an organization. Like, no, you literally have to say those words out of your mouth. And if you don't think that's racist, it's just because you don't want to admit to being racist. And I understand that. Who wants to admit to being a racist? Not many people. So that's kind of how I felt about the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm happy that it's grown so much and to put my own weight behind it. Being an LGBTQ individual, part of that community, I'll put a little something on that you didn't ask me. As a Black person growing up when I did, like, Black communities are kind of conservative, socially, not in any other way, because, every other way it's just us trying to get rights, but socially conservative, and it has a lot to do with the church. So dealing with like issues with my race and then retreating to the comfort of my people and then having to deal with issues with me being gay or not really puts you in a box of just complete isolation, the closet as it is. But it was just twice as much. And I remember looking on TV like, well, because I was depressed for like probably like 6 years at that point, through high school. So maybe about 5 years of just deep depression, like contemplating suicide all the time. And I was like, well, that's so crazy, because, it seems like all these white people on TV, if they're gay, they come out and their parents throw a party. That's obviously not the case completely, but, things that are seen on TV, anything I would have seen was kind of just glamorized or not really showing authenticity. So I thought, and then all these people in the church talking about how it's so horrible, and, just people would use the term, oh, that's gay, for something bad. I mean, that hasn't even gone away that long ago, saying something's gay, meaning it's bad. Right. So all of this, and people would just very easily, they would feel very comfortable using gay slurs, fag, all the time. As we move through time, different groups finally get noticed, and you are no longer able to make fun of them or use the slurs as much as possible, as much as they used to. And that was kind of where the time was for gay people when I was in the late 90s, early 2000s. So that was really hard with my own, because I was in that Black area, and I was like you guys can help me with the racism thing, but this is horrible being a gay person. Luckily, so I'm a person that comes across as masculine, so people don't assume I'm gay. So I haven't had to deal with, so some of the things I've dealt with have just been like mentally. So I wouldn't get bullied for being gay because people wouldn't assume I'm gay. But I know someone who has been bullied for appearing gay about LGBTQ issues, because people are still allowed to, you're still kind of sometimes allowed to kill a Black person, right? Right. So, but transgender people are banned from the military. Transgender women of color are being killed in, just immense numbers. So that part of my community where it struggles, I try to put so much of my energy there to help. And because I feel like there are less prominent out gay people. Well, there used to be very few that were out, and now there are more that are out, but a lot of them are just kind of celebrities. As far as in the community, you don't know as many of them. So I put my face there a lot because I'm always Black. You can always tell I'm Black. But you can't always tell I'm gay. So I try to lend my voice and my experience to that side as well. For someone who just looks like this masculine guy, quote unquote, well, I'm a gay man too. This is what it is like to be a gay person in this country. And I try to share my experience. When I ran for vice chair, every county I went to, I didn't have to mention I was a Black man. I'm a queer Black man. And some people came up to me and say, oh, you're not queer. Don't say you're queer. I'm like, I am. Don't tell me what not to say. And some people would come up to me and say, I can't believe I'm a young man of the Democratic Party. would come up to me and say, I can't believe that I saw somebody run talking about how they're gay on this stage. And it was interesting because I ran against someone who was also a part of the community, but I guess I just vocalized it so much that people would come up to me and be proud or be shocked that I was able to give voice to the LGBTQ community, regardless of what county I was in. I was told, well, maybe don't say that in this county. I was like, I'm not going to take this position if I'm elected and not be who I am. So no matter how rural or whatnot the county might be, I was true to who I am, and I always will be, because that's the burden of being a woke individual. So
I could keep listening. I can keep listening.
And I will just keep talking.
And I don't mind a bit. I don't mind a bit. I appreciate what you said in particular in terms of it didn't matter what county you were in, which is how I received what you said. And it's not exactly how you said it, but it's certainly how it hit me. And I just so appreciate that authenticity.
Yeah.
I guess it's also poignant because, you know, we did the silent march protest vigil with Mike and Charles yesterday. And one of the things that was said was there are a lot of people out here with a lot to lose. And they were specifically talking about elected officials for getting with them at one time. And I can't change who I am and what I care about because of the moment I'm in. And I think that much like you, whether you were in an ultra conservative community in our 33 counties when you were running, or whether you were in a far more liberal / progressive community, you were just always Marcus Aurelius Porter, a Black man who is also a person that understands the lived experience of a Black man with the intersectionality of also being part of the LGBTQ plus community. And I just really value you saying that.
Oh, thank you.
You know, and we ought to land this plane, as much as I don't want to, because I think I could listen to you talk for a long time. And I'm going to do a better job of that in the years to come in our friendship. And but maybe you could kind of close with any other insights you want to share with us on your lived experience. But as a final thought, something I ask almost all the guests, which is how, from where you sit and the lens you look through and the experience you've had, knowing everything you know about the community, how those of us in this community be better allies and be more supportive of your community, which is obviously also our community.
So I can be more supportive. Basics. So I know sometimes people just don't like to speak, but let's start with, if you're at a Democratic function, like there are 5 Black people there, maybe speak to them. You know, hey, do that. I'm the vice chair of the Democratic Party. I can be at a function. I was at a function for the Black Caucus, New Mexico Democratic Black Caucus, and I'm the vice chair. People just walk by, not even like speak. I go and speak because I'm on, but it's as simple as that. Because if I can get real with you here as we close it, as a Black person, I don't, and you know, you get, just for Marcus, you get trust intrinsically until you prove otherwise. But as a Black person, like, I don't just like trust that even if you call yourself liberal and you're a white person, that you are actually an ally of mine. I can't trust that because I can't rely on that, because I haven't been able to rely on that. And my parents haven't been able to rely on that. And my grandparents haven't been able to rely on that. You know, it's talking points don't do much for me. So do something basic. Speak to that Black person you see. Say hi. I mean, because if you can't do that, if you haven't done that, then you know there's nothing I can really give you at an advanced level. But if you are someone who's engaged, I mean, do like what you're doing, Brian. You are someone who's engaged already. You already are woke. You already are an ally. Just have a deeper conversation. Ask a question. Like when you sent me that text, when I guess I was clearly unable to hide how I was doing.
I just know you well enough and long enough to know, Marcus. Come on.
Yeah, you know, it was that extra text. You know, it helped, and I will reply. I will let you in. It's just also realize that it may be very hard for whatever Black person you're asking for them to talk about it, because compartmentalizing it is the only thing keeping them sane. So sometimes opening it up is a lot, because it's never going to be one time that you're asked about it. So, you know, have the basics of decency. When you are a better person and you're woke, like Ryan, have a deeper conversation with some of the people that you know. And next step is just talking to people who are not Black about that same thing, about how you have done things to be supportive and you'd like to get more people who are not Black or not people of color or what have you to join. So basics, have a deep conversation, and then recruit.
And then what? Recruit?
Yeah.
Recruit others to have those same deep conversations? Is that your?
Yeah, recruit other allies, because not everyone even knows, especially here, even knows a Black person, like really even knows a Black person. I'm like a lot of people's Black friend, and I'm like, I'm not actually, you know, there are a few people that we're actually friends with. I keep a very tight circle. So
Yes.
it's that's why it starts with saying hi. Oh, you can start a conversation. You know, that's another thing you see in Baltimore. If you have like white people who are really down for Black people, we will really be down for you. And you'll see yourself welcomed in a way that's, you know, that you probably wouldn't have imagined, which I think a lot of people would enjoy. We like that a lot.
Can I speak to that just for a
Yeah.
second? You have another couple minutes, you all right? What time?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay, good. You know what I was gonna wear today, and it's in my bedroom, but I was gonna wear my Marcus Porter button.
Oh yeah, that's a cool little pin.
It's a very cool little pin. But let me just put an exclamation mark on the point you just made about being welcomed, and after you say hi, and once the community knows you've got its back, the stuff you get in return, and the warmth and kindness. And I'm adding words, not your words, but kind of how I receive them.
Mm-hmm.
That support is really awesome and deep and authentic. Let me just tell you my own lived experience as it relates to that comment, because I've done a lot of political forums over the years. I've done more than once, and honored to be serving nearly 530 days in the office of the state. But I will tell you that, and I know that you probably have heard me say this before, or at least Pamela Herndon has, because she's on today, and I know that she's listening in, as is Dean Matheson, as is maybe our Supreme Court, our Court of Appeals Judge Shamara Henderson might be tuned in today too.
Oh, hey, everybody.
County Treasurer Burse is here, and Denise Lee is here. She's coming on tomorrow, I think. We're looking forward to a candid conversation with Denise. But what I was going to say was that some of my favorite experiences, and Alex gifted to me a speech that I delivered that he supported. It sits on my wall that I gave at the Islamic Center of New Mexico. But in terms of forums, my all-time favorite forums, I mean, just absolutely in a league of its own. And I'll never forget it. I think, it was during the mayoral race, and the NAACP New Mexico, NAACP Albuquerque hosted the forum, and it was awesome. There were red chairs, these not lounge chairs, what do you call them? Like those lazy boy, comfortable, highly padded chairs. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, kind of like recliner. They didn't slide back, but they're just those big chairs, big comfy chairs. Nothing like here at Casa Colon. We got the basics here, but cool red chairs. And we did that 90-minute forum, and it was kind of a dialogue, and we were all on stage, and the panel was offering up questions. We offered up answers. And I am telling you, the warmth I felt in that room and the receptiveness I felt in that room was just exceptional. And it was a room full of Black women and men who care about this community deeply. And I just will never forget it. But just really, for me, it personalizes what you just said in terms of the support and the authenticity and the caring that you feel from the African-American community when they get the sense that you're with them and that you see them and that you hear them. And I've been hearing this morning, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, this has been great, Brian. I really do appreciate this candid conversation.
You bet. Anything else I didn't give you a chance to share because I talked too much and didn't listen enough, but I promise to do more in the future.
We did talk a great deal, but
well, it is my show, Cafecito con Colon. It's my therapy. I gotta speak.
No, I think we got through a lot of different things. I'm sure there's a million other nuances that we could have spoken about, but I think it was a good 45 minutes, a good beginning of this kind of conversation.
Will you come back?
Of course.
All right. Hey, Marcus Aurelius Porter, I love you.
Love you too, man.
And I appreciate you coming on Cafecito con Colon. I'll look forward to seeing you in person before too long. And thanks for all you do for our community. Folks, this incredible human being's got some great expertise in marketing. I want you to go back to the link that I posted promoting today and give this Black man some business. And he will take care of your business. And
I can't say that.
there you go. This message brought to you by Marcus Aurelius Porter. But I appreciate you, buddy. Make it a great day. Thank you for all of our friends and my therapist here on Cafecito con Colon. Appreciate you joining me. Please, while we have these Black voices that matter, we hope that you will contemplate your women and men, your Black friends that you are enriched by having. I hope that these conversations encourage you to reach out to them and have the difficult dialogue, have the uncomfortable conversation, be candid and say, I wasn't comfortable saying Black man because I was worried about what that meant to people who received that, but never took the time to have the conversation. What took me so long? I mean, if I'm uncomfortable there, and that means I know other people are too. And so I just encourage you to have those conversations. And let's all get more comfortable by understanding and listening to the lived experience of the people in our lives we care about and that we see, but we haven't heard enough because we haven't listened. So thanks for letting me listen, Marcus Aurelius Porter. Thank you to all our friends that tuned in this morning. Make it a great day. I think Denise Lee is going to be on with us tomorrow. It is sure to be a powerful, powerful hour on Cafecito con Colon. And then next week, we've got some other great guests lined up, and I know that you will enjoy them. And I know that I will be enriched for having engaged with them in difficult dialogue that makes me the best version of myself I was created to be. And I appreciate you doing that, Marcus. Make it a great day. God bless.
Thanks,
everybody.
you too.
Thank you.